Welcome to Inksights, a publishing podcast giving you important insights into the industry. This is Amy.
And Lily.
We all love prizes and awards, and we've been excitedly following the Nibbies recently, but today we're going to set aside our enthusiasm and talk about some of the issues that can affect awards within the book community and how we personally think awards can be improved in general.
We've invited our friend Natalia, who is also on the UCL publishing course and interested in this area, to chat with us today.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. Today we will be talking about various prizes. Now, there's a massive amount of prizes that exist in the literary world. Many are added every single year. The main prizes that everyone kind of knows about are the Booker Prize and the Women's Prize, which has always been for fiction, but just this year has added an additional prize for non-fiction, and the International Booker Prize. There's also the Nibbies, which are the British Book Awards for within the industry, and various different bookshops have their own prizes for Novel of the Year, Children's Book of the Year, etc. For many years, the market was kind of ruled over quite often by the Costa Coffee Prize, but recently this has ended and been taken over by the Cafe Nero Prize. So we will be talking about these prizes today, speaking about the issues that there can be from some of these prizes, the discrimination that can take place, and what we personally think of these prizes, what we think can improve, and if my fellow hosts are up for it, speaking about some of our favourite books that have won prizes in the past. We will also be discussing some recent controversy and how political we think prizes should be, particularly keeping in mind the recent Hugo Awards. Right, okay. So Natalia, we have brought you in under our expert. Natalia is currently starting her dissertation on discrimination within prizes. Natalia, would you like to tell us a bit about that?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I've been very interested in prizes lately. I just want to start by saying that I am not from the UK, so I have like a lot of ideas going on about prizes, not only here, but also in the Hispanic world, also in the South American area, and also in the American one. And one of the things that I've been noticing about prizes is not only the people that are getting the prizes, but also who are the judges behind those things. And that is a little bit about what I am intending on doing some research about. Like, is it a coincidence that a lot of men are getting prizes because of the judges? Or is it a coincidence that when, I don't know, women in general get prizes is because of the judging panel? Or is it just because of the type of prize it is? Is it because it's, I don't know, indie, not indie? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of things that we can call coincidence, but I don't think they are. So that's a little bit about what I intend to check.
That's fascinating. I mean, it brings me to mind of the recent scene of the film American Fiction, which is based on a book by Percival Everett called Erasure. And it's basically kind of satirizing the literary world from the point of view of a Black man who writes this kind of parody of how Black people can be represented in media. And he then becomes one of the judges for this literary panel. And there are 3 white members of the board and 2 Black members, him and another author. And they both, and the parody book that he writes was nominated for the award, and both him and the woman are like, no, this book is clearly terrible, it's clearly like a satire. And the 3 white judges say, no, we think it's brilliant. And because of them, the book wins, which can kind of show you how it can be a real problem. And also, I mean, not literary, but we saw this with the Oscars. If you just have a certain type of people judging prizes, the same kinds of books will win. Also, with the Women's Prize, I can't remember if it was this year or last. No, it's this year. Adjoa Ando, who's an actress, is one of the judges. And you might think, well, shouldn't it be all literary people or authors? But actually, it's quite interesting to get the point of view of someone who's a reader who reads these books for entertainment without having like all of the prejudice and all of the ideas that we might have as readers who are used to reading like hundreds of books a year. If you see what I mean?
Yeah, I think that there is like some preconception, or the way that we were raised and that we learn about prizes is that they're like very prestigious, right? So they should be given to authors that have like a lot of I don't know, like a trajectory in the world, and the idea is that they are recognized because of their literary excellence. And in the end, if somebody wins a prize, that means that they are the best of the best, right? It's like this merit and this cultural relevance. And I do feel that that's kind of in the past, right? I feel like book prizes right now they should start playing like this transformative role in the literary area. Just like bringing some authors and their works from like we think obscure, like I don't know, type of literature that we've never read about, and just like bring them to light, right? So I feel like the power of a book prize, it shouldn't be only like the recognition of this literary excellence, because to be honest, what does excellence mean in the end? But like in the potential to just like bring these relatively unknown authors into the public eye, and amplifying their voices and amplifying like their perspective, like in the area. So in the end, book prizes should be a powerful platform, to just like shedding light into these marginalized voices, or these crucial societal issues, like for example right now, all of these Palestine things going on, and nobody knew that there's a lot of very good authors that come from that area of the world. And I feel like, for example, if somebody gave someone from Palestine like the possibility of being part of the conversation, not only through like a book prize, but whatever area it could be, it can bring and stimulate a lot of the dialogue that we have as readers.
Well, that's fascinating. Amy, were you about to
Yeah.
mention?
Well,
Yes, you were. Go ahead, Amy.
I don't know if I'm mentioning the same thing, but I was just kind of thinking, you have a real point there. Like, I sometimes find that it's difficult to say what is literary excellence because you have such a point that like there's a lot of debut authors and kind of people that aren't kind of so mainstream that just don't get noticed. And I find that a lot of prizes, I seem to already know the books quite often. I'll be like, oh, yep, seen that one, because they're the ones that are pushed very mainstream in bookstores and in, you know, kind of literary spaces and stuff. So it sometimes makes me wonder like what the criteria and how people have been kind of selected for these things, if they're already people that we know. Maybe it's just out of the people we know that get chosen. Maybe there's no kind of chance for people who are debut or like not in mainstream to kind of get recognition.
Yeah, I feel like that happens a lot when we're thinking about like very famous international awards. Like, for example, think about the Nobel Prize. Like every person that's won a Nobel Prize, they were already known, and they've been in the field for about, I don't know, at least 20 or 30 years. And some of them already died a couple of years ago. So like everyone was already known, and what they're doing is just like recognizing them because they're outstanding. Again, what does excellent, what does outstanding mean? And then we get, for example, like a Pulitzer Prize, and it's like fiction, drama, history, I don't know what else, poetry, biography. And again, they are recognizing like achievements, in this case, American authors, I think, of people or groups that were already known, or that they already had like the money to start PR, the money to get like great marketing, things like that. So that's why I also think that like smaller prizes, maybe regional prizes, genre specific awards, are the ones that should actually start thinking about getting new unknown people into the mix. In the end, nobody from the Nobel, nobody from Pulitzer, nobody from the Man Booker Prize is actually going to care about people that are not known, because to be honest, they need the money, right? So I don't know, just think about genre specific awards. I don't know, Women's Prize. That's what I think that, for example, it's a comprehensive, well-rounded prize. If you think about it, like, and of course, because they just unveiled the shortlist, I think they just did like a couple of days ago or yesterday.
It was a few days ago now.
Yeah, a few days, I think. And if you see that, I don't know, the shortlisted authors, they're not all known. I recognize two names, honestly. And then when you think about it, it's not only the fact that they are being recognized, but also something that I thought that was very interesting is that what would they get? If you win any of these other international prizes, you will get a lot of cash. I don't know, 50,000 pounds, USD or whatever. But with the women's prize, it's not only that. If I'm not mistaken, they are getting mentorship sessions. They are getting writing courses. They are getting studio sessions for, I don't know, recording audios on Audible. Like they are getting things. And this is like a prize that is specially designed to complement what I like the act of writing, the profession of writing, which is what I feel like prizes in the end should be. It's not only recognizing that you're good, it's also saying like, hey, you are good and I want you to be better. I want you to take advantage of this. And I haven't heard of anything like that before, like a prize that actually cares of the people they are awarding.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, especially if they're kind of ones that you don't recognize before this. I mean, I had a little glance at the list as well, and I thought that I didn't recognize a lot of the authors either. So it's really great that they're awarding this developmental sort of prizes and stuff like that. That's great.
No, go
I
ahead.
don't know, I was actually going to ask you, like, if you were applying for a prize, I don't know, being shortlisted, like, what would you like to get besides the money? Because you already know that's part of the package. Like, what would you like to get? What are you expecting from it?
That's a really good question. I mean, obviously, I feel like people would enjoy being mentored, but I think, like, because I think, as you say about lots of people who are further on in their careers who get awarded, quite often the reward is the prestige. And of course, like, long term, aside from like a prize at the time, the fact is that quite often the rest of your career will be defined by that. But then, obviously, as you say, if you do this book and it wins a prize and then nothing you do after can ever be compared to that in people's minds, like you'd want to continue going. You never want like a book you've written to be the best book you'll ever write, if you see what I mean, in terms of never being able to get past that. So maybe, yeah, mentorship would be the best idea for most of these prizes. Also, interestingly, one big thing with all of these prizes, I mean, the women's science fiction also last year was really good, but I didn't know loads of the books or authors. But what you really need is things like the Hugo Award, which are great for being genre specific, but you need to not just have like the only way you can be rewarded as a sci-fi or fantasy book is from genre specific awards. It has to be slightly more open. Like obviously we all want like books to be awarded not because people feel like they should be, but because they like genuinely deserve it because they're great writing. But quite often there is a mental barrier where people think, well, but these genres can't be great writing in the first place, if you see what I mean.
You know what I would really love? Just in the prize process. I'm not sure whether any prizes actually already do this, but to see like a transparency in terms of like how they decided on literary excellence, what were kind of the criteria that they used and the sort of why did some things kind of well, I think it would be too harsh to say if they noted down why some books didn't get it. But if they noted down and
The
made fun
feedback,
Sorry, what do you say?
like the feedback, like,
Yeah,
hey,
no.
Just go
you got it,
really
but the person
brutal
didn't
book
get
by
it.
book.
Yeah, it could be really bad if it was for the people that got you know, not into that. But maybe like the feedback and the kind of like judging criteria and like maybe the notes as they kind of like on essays or something, like maybe their notes as they decided that this book went on, because that would probably really help like to kind of um figure out how books get nominated and for what reasons and the whole process. I'd love to find out more about that if any of the prizes do that. Do you know?
Yeah, that would be a really good idea because it would also lead to way more kind of like culpability, because if people were transparent, they feel way more like they have to actually explain and justify it and maybe like challenge their own ideas of why they think that this book should win. Because also quite often, I mean, we never know this for certain, but it's quite often thought like everyone like votes for one book either because they think everyone else will be voting for this one, or they think they'll all be voting for another one, and like things like that. So if you kind of get people really kind of forced to consider why they're awarding certain books, we can all kind of have a conversation about what kind of books we award and why.
I saw that there are a couple of prizes, not here in the UK or in Europe. I know, for example, in South America or even the Hispanic world, in which they say like, okay, we shortlisted this ones, and the reason we are not taking this ones is because, I don't know, they don't have enough characters. They don't have enough, I don't know, an evolution of the characters or of the story or whatever. But what we always get is like, we are giving this to this book because of this, which is fantastic. But also at the same time, what I am thinking is, what would be the difference if, for example, they gave us, the public, a list? Okay, so we got this 10 books. Just choose, like a People's Choice Award kind of book thing, right? Like, do you think that the person chosen in the end would get the same prestige than someone that was elected by a jury kind of thing? Or it would be just like, no, I mean, people just liked it, and it's not like the best book, but people liked it. Or
Yeah,
it would be just like,
I do
yeah,
think
fantastic.
that's an interesting question. I do think that if there was a people's choice sort of thing, I don't think it would be received in quite the same way by the book community. I bet you. I don't know. It's kind of odd to think, because the people who are selecting these, I mean, they're still readers. So they're still going to be subjective, but for some reason there's like some sort of like pedestal put on kind of when it's like not exclusive, when it's not like audience on. Oh gosh, I can just already imagine the Twitter arguments that would happen, like that like people would just be, yeah.
The snobbery would
Yeah.
actually be insane. I mean, it would be quite nice to like be able to award those. And I was at the British Book Award shortlist, and what I find really nice is they have a category for page turners where they have things like Fourth Wing and Yellowface, and it's like, yeah, why? Oh no, wait, sorry, Yellowface is in the thriller list, but like, why is that? Like, I'm glad they have that category, but this kind of shows that those books would never normally be nominated for anything, even though they are worthy of being put in a category of their own, just for how like brilliantly readable they are. But it kind of shows that same kind of snobbery of like, you can't be awarded in the same way if you're just popular, if you're just really readable. You have to be like fantastic in some way, which I do get, and people should be, but it's like, well, why can't there be awards? Also because we, not to pull back the curtain on our classes, but the other day in one of our classes we were asked to start a new book award, and a number of us did do prizes for romance books, and we were kind of thinking like, oh, how would this work, how would you do this? And we did kind of agree that like it would be really looked down on, it would be slightly difficult to get funding. I mean, now especially with the just with the massive growth of book talks, sales have increased massively for romance, but that still doesn't mean that it's respected. If anything, actually, book talk gets a lot of flack for the fact that they only read romance. But yeah, so things like that, it's kind of interesting to see what kind of prizes are looked down on or would be looked down on. And also, again, in terms of the idea of like transparency, like you were saying, Natalia, it would be good to see them like justifying their selection process and kind of having judges confront their own preconceived notions of what should win awards, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, but again, that would take me back to the question, like, what is an excellent book or what is good?
Yeah.
Just because of what you said, like book talk and people in general, they love to read romance. I say they because that's not my favorite one, so I wouldn't be, don't ask me, I wouldn't be able to say anything. But people in general, we like to read romance, and just because it's commercial, just because everyone's reading it, it doesn't mean that it's bad. Like, it's just different type of public. And I think that everything, again, because we think that the things like the smart things are the ones that are worthy of our times, are worthy of awards, and not the things that everyone reads. That's because of how elitist this book world is. That's why the book prices are so elitist as well. It's just because we think that something is worthy just because a bunch of men or people that have a lot of masters and PhDs said that they were good, not because they were actually good. So it's just like thinking a little bit about that too. Like there's a lot of cultural capital in them just because we're giving them the power of saying like this is good, this is bad. Why? Just because I say so, just because they have a PhD, just because they have masters, but not because it's actually good. I am saying like, I don't know, a lot of people on book talk are reading one book and they say like, no, it's not good, it's just for, I don't know, housewives. It's just like, and why would that be a bad thing? That for me, that just means that it's so freaking good that women, very busy women, are taking their time to read that book. So it's just like, for me, it's just like, this is fantastic. But they say like, no, it's not legitimate. Look at the people that are reading it. That makes no sense.
Exactly. And that's actually the really interesting thing about romance, but also like sci-fi and fantasy. In these genres, there is so much competition and so many like really like, I mean, in very different ways. Like with sci-fi and fantasy, you have to make sure the world's engaging. With romance, it's more like to make the kind of storyline and the characters engaging. But it's like these are fiercely competitive areas and they don't get the right amount of respect that they should, for the fact that if readers are reading your books, like that's incredible, because people, once you become a real fan of like a certain genre, you will have quite high standards. So exactly as you say. Also, in terms of that, a few years ago, when Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus came out, a book that I personally love, but loads of people I know love, I was really surprised when it wasn't nominated for the Women's Prize for Fiction. And I was speaking to someone kind of adjacent to the field of publishing, and they're saying it wouldn't be because it's seen as too commercial. And I'm like, but that's ridiculous. Like, it's a great book, it's really enjoyable, even if it's not like written incredibly well. It's a book that I and loads of people I knew loved. So it's like, why is it automatically excluded because it's written by this person who doesn't like, who isn't, kind of like we said earlier, who isn't someone that the prize judges recognize themselves in?
Yeah, I I agree with you. And again, it's because of this idea of something being excellent just because a few can actually understand it. So it's like, this book is amazing. Oh, you didn't understand it. It's not for everyone.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Is that like, it makes no sense. Like, if people enjoy it and people like it, and like, it means it's good. Just because all of us enjoying it, that doesn't mean it's bad. Like, I feel like we are putting a lot of like a lot of good, or we think that something's good just because people are saying that they are good, people that are like important, rather than us saying like, this is good because I enjoyed it and my friends enjoyed it and I recommended this book to my mom, because we will all enjoy it. And again, it's because of like the media, the people or professors, like they are giving us like, or trying to tell us what is good and what is bad, just because if it's commercial is bad, if it's not commercial nobody understands it, it's good. No, no sense. Like, that is not how literature should be seen at right now. I don't know, something that, like, I'm just thinking when I was a kid, when I was in high school, this was 2010, let's say, and a long time ago, 2010. And I was just like thinking like, okay, I want to read all of the novel books that there are. And I started reading, right? So in my country, in Colombia, we have a Nobel Prize winner. So I started reading that book and I was like, no, this is too hard. Because it's not like an easy book, 100 Years of Solitude. It's not an easy book. It has like a lot of characters and it has like a lot of development. Of course, I was, I don't know, like 15, 14. Of course, I wasn't going to understand a book like that. It didn't mean that it was a bad book, and it was just like, no, it's so bad. I don't know why it didn't it won. And everyone was just like, no, you didn't get it. And I feel like that's something that we also have to understand. And that is like, not because like if you don't like a book doesn't mean that it's not good just because you didn't understand it.
Exactly, yeah.
That's like, and it depends on the time of life you're reading it. Also, if the judges, like a panel, if they are, I don't know, 70 years old, they are not going to get what's trending on Book Talk. I mean, it's not like they're not going to get it, but probably they won't relate in the same way that we relate, you know? So they are just saying like, no, it's not that good. Yeah, it's because you're not the person or the target of that book. That's something that we also should understand. Like the books, the judging panels, like, are they diverse enough? Again, are there women and men, Black, Asian, Hispanic, whatever? Like, how diverse are they, so we can actually get like a good idea of what is being judged and how.
Well, one question that's really interesting in terms of that is what recently happened with the Hugo Awards. Now, do you guys know about this? Amy, I know we've discussed this before.
Yeah.
Natalia, are you aware of it?
Yeah,
I think it would have been hard not to be at a certain point.
Everywhere.
So essentially what happened was the Hugo Awards, which is this massively prestigious sci-fi and fantasy award that Neil Gaiman has won in the past, that's just this really brilliant award for highlighting these books, was hosted in China. Now Chinese readers in particular, were really excited because they said, okay, here's this great way to kind of like celebrate our country's culture, celebrate some really great writers, and like have this great thing happen in our own country. And everyone was really excited until the nominations came out. And then people started to get very concerned because essentially what had happened, I mean, at first people were kind of reacting slowly. It was just weird because there were two Chinese authors in particular, Zhang Zhao, who wrote Iron Flame. They're a really great writer. They're a great activist. And R.F. Kuang, who's of course written Babel and Yellowface and the Poppy War series, are two incredible writers who everyone expected would have been nominated, especially for Babel, which is a really interesting kind of book talking about like colonialism and featuring a Chinese main character. And so essentially loads of people are like, it's a bit strange that specifically these like more political books, and there were a few other books that were also more politicized that weren't on the list, and questions were raised and people demanded, as we are saying maybe we should, transparency from the judges. And eventually the documents were released and it was made very clear that the Chinese authorities had asked, not very precisely either, kind of just said, please exclude things that could be offensive, exclude like discussion of Chinese history, exclude various things. And the judges, quite often actually including Americans who were doing this, weren't sure what that meant. And so they just kind of did a blanket ban on anything that could be seen as controversial. And it meant like huge swaths of really great work were excluded. So essentially that's the worst case scenario of what could happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's especially complicated because I mean, that's not even, it's it's even more complicated because I mean, that's censorship at that point. It's not even just kind of like
genuinely.
It's like not even just the awards being like not diverse enough in their kind of their judging panel. It's literally just censorship, which makes prizes even more hard to kind of trust almost. I think this is why personally I really am for like more kind of transparency with prizes. I just think that'd be great to know what exactly is kind of behind all of these decisions, especially in cases like this where it's obviously come to light that there are some big things happening behind the scenes.
I feel like what actually happened, of course, it was this censorship thing. But right now, what we are thinking is how legitimate these awards are. Not only this one, not only the Hugo Awards, like in general awards, how legitimate they actually are. Because if we are putting all of our hopes, like, okay, they're telling us what the best books are, and then they turn out with something like this, which is actually a joke. Like you will say, like, okay, how legitimate it is for me to start or to continue following these awards, or to continue giving them the importance that I've been giving them in the future. So like, are this legitimate? It like, yeah, and not only for us as readers, but also for writers. Like, we always think everything from the reader area because we are readers. But what about the writers? Um, like for them to, after they submitted, well, they don't submit it, but after they have their work in there, everyone was judging them, and then someone saying like, "Hey, no, we don't want your work because it's not enough for us." I feel like that's also a very hard part about the publishing world. It's not only us as readers, but also as writers. Like, okay, am I not good enough? Or is this prize telling me I'm not good enough because of the biases that there are, and why I am questioning my legitimacy as an author just because of what they are saying? Right? So it's just like three things: how legitimate they are as like a book prize, how like what's this category or this thing that we are giving them as book prizes, us as readers, and what are the authors feeling and doing and thinking about this awards? Like, are they still wanting to have their work being part of this world, or maybe it's not worth it?
That'll be it would be a real shame if, like, I mean, obviously authors, I mean, can authors like opt out of these awards? I don't know the process of submissions really.
There was a case a few years ago. There was like this award for Black, Asian, minority, ethnic authors in the UK, and I saw this speaker talking about how she had opted out of it. I mean, I'm sure the problem, because she said that she didn't feel like her work should be defined by her race. Like, it just happened to have a person of color as a main character, and she just happened to be a person of color writing it. But I think it does then get to the question of like, well, I mean, at a certain point with something like a Booker Prize or women's science fiction, you really wouldn't want to because of the prestige. So you kind of become trapped with it. It's like you end up possibly shooting yourself in the foot, to use that phrase, if you do opt out of it. But it's like, there could be legitimate reasons for why you don't want to be included alongside other books.
True. I don't know if you can opt out of it. Like, I know that you can from some of them. I don't know from all of them, because in the end they just know that they're nominated and the next week they're just winning or not winning, and that's it. But for example, I feel like there's something very powerful about these authors, that they end up winning the award and they say like, I'm not taking either the prize or whatever this comes with. I think that's like a very badass move. And I also feel like that's very important, because we're all thinking about like this prestige and this amazing thing about winning, but what happens when you win and you don't want to win? Like, that's also a very bold political statement. One. Second, a very bold PR statement as well. But in general, also, it's like this calling of, hey, I was able to win this, but that doesn't mean that my book is actually like, that doesn't mean that my book is good or not good just because I got it. Right? Just like, I am aware that it's good because I wrote it. I don't need anybody saying it is or not. That's a very badass. Like, I really admire that.
Yeah, that must be so weird if you just kind of wake up one day and your book's just been nominated. Like, that must be kind of, like, puzzling if you never like submit it or whatever. But I mean, for some people it'd be a really nice surprise. But I definitely think what we're taking from this is, A, we want more transparency with like these awards, and B, there should be kind of more diversity on the board so that we have kind of more diversity in the choices that are being made in the books that are being nominated, and also maybe more awards that seem to branch outside of what is considered like literary or not literary. Also, I found this quite interesting. Going back to our classes slightly, we were doing a lot of sort of what would you do if you wanted a kind of a new prize to be made. And a lot of people were talking about translations, which I think would be really cool. Because I would really love to like incentivize like translators to kind of how to phrase this, not try harder, but you know, like just kind of
Be
like
incentivized, let's say.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just reward really good translations, because I think translations can make or break a translated work, really.
They
Yeah.
are so important. So
Exactly.
important. Especially, for example, me, I read in Spanish mainly, and when I want to, and I came here to UK, and there are some books that I want to read, but they were just written in Spanish first, and I can't find very good books in Spanish here, so I have to settle for the translations. And then I started reading, and they are so bad. But there are some of them that are so good. I'm just like, this person actually knows what they're doing. Like, it makes the entire difference. And I'm just like, wow, I know that the author is great, but this translator is fantastic. And I feel like that is something that we actually have to, to award. Like, in the end, there's these people that they didn't read, like, write the book, but they are like making it accessible to other people. And that is so important. Someone that is able to take someone's work and just put it out there for other people that weren't able to access to it first. There's something magical in that, I feel. It should be actually awarded.
I think
I
so.
agree. Sorry, go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, no, because I mean, I've known a few of my friends who have read like I won't name the book, but there's one book that I quite enjoyed, actually. But one of my friends said that the translation was just so bad that they couldn't read it without looking past it. I think I've read so many dodgy translations that I kind of auto-translate it in my head, like correct the grammar and everything. But yeah, I do think that it would be great to get more people reading translated works. And I think one way to do this is just to make sure that translations are done really well. So I'd love to see a prize doing that.
I definitely agree. I feel like one way to do that is to kind of give more prestige to translation, because I think we were speaking about this in how quite often you have to work quite hard to find the name of the translator for certain books. And I was reading this series of works, these great Japanese murder mystery novels, and almost every book had a different translator. And I'm like, well, how are you meant to have any kind of cohesion of style if every book is translated by a different person? And I do agree, like, you can have a really bad translation if they haven't really got to grips fundamentally with the work and kind of like really understood what the author was doing. I mean, one book that I found brilliant is Butter by Asako Yuzuki, which is translated by Polly Barton, and something about her style is just really great and crisp, and you can totally like, I mean, I'm saying this as an English person who does not read Japanese. Maybe it's, no offense to Polly Barton, not all an accurate translation, but reading it, you feel like it is. You feel like it completely gets the sense of the book and the style completely matches the book, which of course happens when it's an author writing in their original language, but can be a lot harder when it's a translator who's coming from outside of it. And I think, Amy, you were making the point that it's really important for the translator to kind of know about the culture.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Because I mean, there's a lot of intricacies in kind of different cultures, and sometimes like something that could be a normal thing to say in one culture can come across really badly if it's translated wrong. And sometimes it's like not even like a thing. I mean, it's a bit complicated to say because, you know, obviously there are some sort of there's like cultural sensitivities, and then there's things where like the culture does need to work on it, like maybe on sexism or something like that. But also it could just be that this is like a phrase that it's acceptable in that culture and is actually not tied to the actual literal meaning of the way it's said. But then when it's translated in a slightly like wrong way, if the translator doesn't know how this kind of phrase would maybe be translated in meaning rather than in word for word, it can come across really, really badly. And 100% can dissuade people from liking a book. So yeah, it's quite complicated.
Yeah, that's a magical thing again. So I do feel like we need a prize for that, an award for that, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And like we say, I think it would be good to kind of really motivate people to think more deeply about translation and not treat translators as interchangeable and kind of let them do it. Also, especially because, I mean, really off topic now, but there has been concern that people would use AI for translation, which would, of course, be absolutely terrible. I mean, we all see how Google Translate like decides what the meanings are of certain sentences, and we all know like it's not good. So yeah, it would be really great for translation in particular to have a certain prize and to be awarded in that way. Right,
Yeah.
I have to head off in a minute. Of
right.
course, you guys can stay on the call, but just are there kind of any? Oh yes, so we always talk about what we're reading at the moment, but first, why don't we just say some quick closing comments on like our thoughts and what like one particular thing we would like to change in terms of prizes. Amy, why don't you start going around clockwise, at least how everyone looks on my screen, then Natalia, and then I'll go last.
Okay. So I would really love, I mean, I said earlier, I would love transparency. I really want to know why people are choosing the books that they are. And I think, like Lily was saying, I think if people have to put a reason for why they're deciding to choose this book, I think that prizes will be a lot better and more well thought out and more easily accepted maybe as well. And I think also it might make people who don't really see prizes as kind of well, I mean, people who see prizes as like, I don't know, just exercise of snobbery or something, to kind of maybe look into why the books are being kind of nominated and why they are like awarded, like as you, Natalia, as you were saying, like why they are literary excellent, excellent sort of rather than, why not this book and not this book? I think that'd be great.
Natalia?
I would say two things. One, since prices exist and they will continue existing, we need very good, comprehensive, well-rounded prices, not only the money. We need to start nurturing authors. We still need to nurture the craft of writing. So if prices are going to exist, it's not only about the money and the prestige. It's also about mentorship. It's also about what they can do with what they did. I don't know, recordings, things like that. Very good marketing, PR, like things that can actually catapult authors. That's one part, and the other part is what you said, Amy. In the end, it doesn't matter if some book was awarded or not. You like what you like. It's not like something's excellent and something's not. Like stop. We should stop doing that. Just enjoy what you enjoy, and if you think it's good, it's good. So that's fine.
Okay.
As a final thing, I think I'd really love a wider kind of range of prizes with the opportunity for a wider range of books to be awarded. I would lose my mind if there was a romance-specific book prize. I'd really love that. You know what? I want someone to tell me what the best enemies to lovers book of that year was. I will eat that up. But yeah, on a serious note, I just feel like we need to kind of, it's in terms of what both of you said, we need a wider range of readers on judging panels, and therefore we can lead to a wider range of books being considered. So, what has everyone been reading?
Who wants to go first? Should I take it?
I
You should go first. Yes.
I am very sunburnt because I got very distracted reading a book. So
This sounds great.
Oh, it was excellent. So I've read like 1,000,000 books this week. I'm finally back on my reading goal. But my favorite has been the reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. She wrote the Good Girl's Guide to Murder books, which I cannot wait to read next. but this is just an absolutely excellent thriller about like this young woman whose mum has been missing for 16 years, ever since she was a baby, who randomly comes back from the dead, and it's her trying to figure out why has her mum come back now, what happened to her, is she lying about what happened, and it's just fantastic. Natalia?
Amazing. I am reading The Argonauts by Maggie
Ah,
Nelson. It's a really cool book. It's kind of hard to categorize. It's like part of memoir, part of like a philosophical exploration, and part of like love story, not only with like a partner, but with herself. And it's basically Maggie Nelson's relationship with her own life and with her partner, and their journey through queer love, queer pregnancy, queer parenthood.
oh,
So what it's very interesting about this book is how the author is going through all of these deep ideas about like gender, sexuality, identity, and it's not only about like her experiences, but also she brings into the reading the theories from philosophers and thinkers, and it's just like, let's talk suddenly about Judith Butler, let's talk suddenly about Sarah Ahmed. And it's like exploring all of these big questions about who we are and how we are relating to each other. So it was pretty unique. I loved it.
Wow, sounds great. Okay, so I've got a few books. So I just finished
lovely.
one, Abroad in Japan.
Oh, great.
I'd say there's things I really love about this book, things that I think could have been better, but generally it was a nice read. And it taught me a lot about kind of rural life in Japan, which was really interesting because it's slightly outside of the usual purview of kind of travel sort of books about Japan. So it was really interesting. And I have just started The Stolen Heir by Holly.
Ooh, I need
I
to
do.
read this.
Yeah, I've read like the main series, obviously, and I've been waiting for this to come into paperback for ages, and then also have an excuse to buy this. And then I saw buy one get one half price, and I was like, okay, you've got me, Waterstones.
Heck yes. Well done,
So
us.
looking forward to doing that.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm just going to round off quickly by mentioning something that I've completely forgot to mention earlier. But in terms of kind of prizes, what prizes are awarded, and in terms of commercialism, one year I find really interesting to consider is the 2022 Booker Prize, which introduced me to one of my favorite authors, Percival Everett, and has been remarked upon as being a far more kind of commercial-based year. Percival Everett's book, The Trees, which is kind of basically a satirical thriller, came out that year. Read it, it's incredible. But it was just really interesting for seeing how a prize can completely change an author's career, because before that, not even all of his books were available in the UK, and now they're just in bestseller lists. His latest book, James, which I'm excited to read, has like had a massive launch. And I think that's important to consider as well when we talk about prizes, and why we talk about prizes is because of how fundamentally they can transform an author's career. Even though he only won when he didn't even win. He was shortlisted at 65 years of age, and that's when his career like was already good, but really, really kicked off.
Yeah, I do think that we've been talking a lot about how prizes could be better, but it's definitely worth acknowledging that prizes are, I mean, sometimes they do things right, and it would be great if they get
Sometimes.
things right. It would be great if they get things right even more. So yeah, it would be really like I think that they can totally transform people's careers, and they can introduce you to some really great, brilliant authors. It would just be great if we could have more transparency and diversity in the selection and criteria and stuff.
Thank you for listening to this episode, and look forward to our next one.